Hi everybody, Helen here for Think Differently Thursday, and I've got Fiona with me. Hi Fiona.
Hi Helen,
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Good. I know you a little. Do you want to just give a brief introduction for people that are listening as to who you are?
Okay, so my name's Fiona and I live in Holbrook on the Shotley Peninsula, which is near Ipswich. And I've got a little girl who's 4.5 and her name's Hope.
Lovely. That's a nice place to be living right now, isn't it? I've done some walks because everybody's walking everywhere. I've done some walks kind of over that way because it's like quite near the Orwell Bridge, isn't it? I've walked like the other side in the Orwell Country Park. It's a lovely area, isn't it?
Oh, I'm very, very, very blessed. I'm not gonna lie. It's beautiful around here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunate to have been brought up here. So yeah,
Right.
it's
Oh, so that was home for you. That's where you grew up.
yeah. So I've brought up Holbrook and have come back to my roots, as they say.
Oh, nice. Lovely.
Yeah, so
Cool.
even Hope's at the school that I went to as well growing up. So
Really? Oh, that's got to be a bit weird.
yeah.
Any of the same teachers there?
No, not anymore. But even stepping into the school hall when we were able to, just seeing it so differently. It was huge when I was little, and now it's like a dinky tiny little place. So yeah.
That's that you've got bigger.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah.
So when you've got a little girl, we're kind of a few weeks on for Christmas, but if she's 4.5, that was a really nice age for Christmas. Was it good? How was, I mean, Christmas was weird for all of us. How was it for you?
It was actually really nice. I think just kind of slowing down, just having that bit of time just of each other. We stayed at my mum's because my mum lives in the house I grew up in the village. So that was really nice, just being all together. We were there for like 10 days or so, and just played games. And Hope was so excited. She literally, this is the first year where she's kind of really got into Christmas, and yeah, it was
Lovely.
really nice.
I've heard so many people say that as well, that Christmas was kind of simpler, quieter, but everybody still really loved it, I think, didn't they? Some people, I think, almost introduced new things or just did things that they're kind of going to take into other years. Was that you at all? Or do you think you'll revert back to whatever Christmas was before?
Oh, yeah. I think just kind of just maybe taking it a little bit slower in a way, really, and not having expectations. And yeah, in some ways we missed the wider family, but yeah, we were still able to connect. You know, I mean, there's ways and means of doing it now. So
yeah. I think we were all doing quizzes over Christmas with our families. We had a quiz that kind of went on over a few days. We're like, oh, should we do the next round tomorrow on Zoom? And what about, are you a New Year's Eve person? Do you celebrate New Year's Eve?
Not really. No. I know we have. It's always kind of that sort of day. But always look forward to the new year. But I don't usually stay up. I record the bit on TV, the fireworks, but
okay.
I watch it the next day. But I don't necessarily stay up. So
we had a surprise in that we just did a fire pit in the garden, and so we kind of got to midnight, and then one of my neighbours, I live on a housing estate, but one of my neighbours did this most enormous firework display. We were just like shocked. It was amazing. So Fiona, I've got to know you a little because you've been coming along to the Forge, but I can't think how long is that now? How long have you been coming along?
Probably nearly a couple of years, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
And feeling at home there?
Yeah. No, oh, definitely. I'm quite fortunate. I'm quite involved with Sporting 87, the football club based in Bury, and so I know quite a few people through that. And yeah, I've felt so at home, and everybody's just really supportive. And yeah, it's a lovely place to be. Really, real community feel. So yeah,
great. We're trying to maintain that, even though we can't all come together now. It's tricky, but we're trying. And so recently, and over these a couple of weeks now, our small groups are all launching. Is that something you've been part of over the time that you've been with us?
Yeah. So last term I joined a 10-week group, and that
Okay.
was really lovely. Yeah, just to get to know people a little bit more, and just pray for one another. And I'm in a group again this term as well. So
Okay. And are you running one? Are you doing a group? Is it a WhatsApp
yeah.
group?
No, I'm doing just a mum's group. We're going to
Okay.
meet once every other Friday. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's over Zoom. But
Yes.
so that'd be really nice, just to connect with others and just support
Great.
each other as well. So yeah.
Great. Now I think I first knew of you. Well, I knew of your, I think I told you this story, that I knew your sister before I knew you, because I did my teacher training with your sister Sarah many years ago. I think that was back in 2007, 2008, I think. And then didn't particularly stay in contact with her, but Facebook's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And so yeah, maybe we exchanged a few messages, or you get to see what people are up to, don't you? And then I started following a blog that she was sharing, which I now know was your husband Mike's blog. And it became really quite compulsive reading for me. And he was sharing his story of having been diagnosed with leukemia. And I guess, the fact that he was local, he was around Ipswich, he was a teacher, lots of things kind of made me kind of connect in, and not least that it was Sarah sharing the story, which I now realise is your story now that we have met. And so, if I remember rightly, Mike was diagnosed quite soon after you'd had Hope. Is that right?
Yeah. So Mike was he was diagnosed with leukemia when Hope was about 10 weeks old. He first found the lump in the March of 2016, when I was heavily pregnant with Hope. And it was he wasn't diagnosed until she was after she was born. But if he'd been diagnosed when she was born, he wouldn't have been able to be there to support us through the early stages of parenting and
Right.
her birth. And so in some ways, as weird as it sounds, it was a small blessing he was diagnosed when he was, but that wouldn't have changed the outcome we came to realize anyway. So
Okay. Yeah.
um,
And
but
so at that time, I mean, a new baby on its own turns your world upside down. So there you are with a brand new baby, and then you get that news. What were your coping strategies at that time? How did you deal with that news?
when he was first diagnosed, and on that day I can remember we had to go back home, and he had to pack bags up, and because he had to literally be admitted that afternoon, because the nature of it was just really, really aggressive. And we just prayed together, and we were like, we're just going to let God have the glory in this, and he's our guide, and he's our strength. And that was just our continued prayer, really. We would pray. I mean, we always did pray together, but he made it very widely known about what prayer points there were, and we had people coming alongside us, and people in the church community, and it was really, really he was very honest and very raw, and I think that people appreciated that, really. And those that don't necessarily know Jesus, it found an easier way of opening up that conversation. And it was just it was a real, even though you could look at it thinking that could have been a very bitter, very difficult time, it wasn't easy time, definitely not. But I think just that real sense of God's peace and love around us all the time, and that was all we could feel. And just listening to worship, just being in that sort of community, really, and just reading our Bible and praying together as much as we could. I mean, Hope was our focus in a way, and she because she's such a small baby, I had to focus on her, and focus on Mike, and caring for him as well. So it was it was
I
tough.
think
Yeah.
I think sometimes whether people have a faith or not, I think sometimes, not always, but sometimes hearing some news like that does make them call out to God. And you will hear of people, won't you, saying that actually I'd never prayed before, but I did pray. But that wasn't your experience, was it? Faith had always been an integral part of your life, or for how long? Is it something that you had chosen quite early on in life?
Yeah, so I was brought up in a Church of England church in the village. I was in the choir. I was I was very much a part of the church, but I'd say my knowledge of the Bible wasn't so until I went to uni, until I went to the Christian Union at the university, and that really opened my eyes a lot.
Right.
I've been quite not shallow in my faith, but it probably wasn't something that throughout the week I fully acknowledged. It was probably just on a Sunday.
Okay. Yeah.
So it wasn't until I went to uni and were amongst other Christians, and that was the other thing for me growing up. There wasn't that many people my age in my church, so
right.
so it was really good to just have that peer support around me at university.
Yeah.
It opened my eyes. So when I finished uni, I joined a 18 to 30s group in a church in Ipswich, and we just got into real nitty gritty of the Bible and really understand. I just looked at some parts of my life that I wasn't always necessarily happy with, and I just thought, no, I need to stop this. I need to change and refocus and seeing God as the center of my life now. And yeah, that's when I really.
So would you say that kind of stood you in good stead for having to then face such a difficult time, that you'd kind of got that reserve or those disciplines already in place of walking closely with God?
Yeah. I think just reading my Bible and just praying and just speaking to other friends who are followers of Jesus. It was just always knowing that if you are going through that difficult time, which we all know there's going to be some sort of storms in our lives, it's not always easy.
Yeah.
We're not immune, but yeah, it means that you just know that real sense of peace in whatever storm comes. You've got Jesus walking with you. So,
and you certainly then did face a further storm, and I will never forget, actually. And I hadn't met you, but as I say, I was following Mike's blog, and I was actually on holiday. I was in Spain with my friend Nikki. We were having a very lazy, girly holiday. We were reading through a stack of books, but I was also following your blog, and I remember reading, and you had written, I think, if I remember, you'd gone off to Wales, I think. I don't know if it was going to be respite, but Mike was so poorly that you turned around and came back, I think. And I remember just crying so much on the terrace of the villa where we were, because Mike had died. And I don't think I have ever cried so much about somebody that I didn't know. I was just so touched by the story, and it just seemed so sad. And I think I also was really impacted and overwhelmed by the way you had written that you had lost your husband, and yet you were writing with such positivity. You were talking about your faith in God. You were talking about your hope for the future. I mean, it just made me cry even more. How would you put into words how were you facing the future at that time?
I think it just goes. I mean, seeing Mike's faith and how much that. I mean, just seeing the strength and the courage that he went through, and just him. We all just were clinging on to God. We just had to. So facing the future, it was always something we discussed as to. So I knew stepping forward exactly what his wishes were, and that does help. But yeah, it's just literally I look at things that God has he's got us all hold tightly. He's not going to do anything to harm us, and Mike's him not being anymore, him being in heaven, is hopefully a way for people to be able to maybe talk to me, or to read the blog, or to want to learn a little bit about Jesus and that piece, that might be really hard for people to grapple and just to understand, but it's an opening point to maybe me to support them in some ways. Yeah, I very much believe that that's what I'm to do, really, is to walk alongside others who may well be going through something similar. Or
wow. Yeah. And you were saying earlier about that you're now publishing the blog as well, aren't you? So I guess it's going to potentially have so much more impact. Well, what stage is that at now?
Well, it's exciting stuff, Helen. Literally, but yeah, I've sent the final version to the publishers today. So hopefully within the next week or so, people should be able to purchase it and actually have a hard copy of the book. Yeah, Mike
so
wrote.
Is it literally the blog as Mike wrote it, or is it been altered to for the book?
He wrote what would be in effect about 1,200 pages. So I had to take out quite a lot of chunks. So, but it's the day to day, and I wanted to really focus on what he was going through, the treatment wise, the chemotherapy, the diagnosis, how that affected us on a day to day life, and his faith, and how important that was, and so just really kept that to be the center of it. People can look at the online version and see that the whole works, and it's now down to about 270 pages. So yeah.
You're so brave, because it's not someone else's story, it's your story, and that must mean that in even paring it down to the amount of pages you have, that means you've gone through it again and again, and that can't have been easy. Has that been painful at times?
I think in a way it got to a point where I just thought I just want to get it done. It was one of the things that Mike spoke about, and yeah, he said I wanted it to be, and he wanted it to be a lasting memory for Hope as well, for her to be able to, bless her, she's learning to read at school, and she's picking up words and things, and a point where she'll look at it and read it, and she can then fully read everything about what happened, and grapple with that. And I've always been very open with her about everything. So
oh, it's amazing. What's it called? What's the book called?
It's just the title of the blog. So Diary of a 20-something cancer fighter. So yeah, I've kept it the same because I thought it's just to do that.
So where can people get it?
They'll be able to get it on Amazon. So they can either get it as a Kindle, so an online version that you could read on your Kindles and iPads and things. You can actually have it as a physical book. So which would be. Well, I hope that does. I hope that's really successful and impacts people, because that's what Mike would have wanted as well, isn't it? I think earlier you said, I can't think how you phrased it. God wouldn't let bad things happen. I can't think what you actually said just now, but it kind of brings to mind that is often what people who struggle with God and faith would say. Why do bad things happen to good people? Or why, if God is a loving God, why does he let these things happen? And it's the age-old question, isn't it? How do you answer that to people? I mean, have you had that? Like, why did your God let this happen? What's your response to that? I think we don't see God sees the full of eternity. We only see a small snapshot of that, and I think that's what I've always been in my mind, is that we will go through these trials, and it's just how we know him in our lives, really, and that's just that peace and that comfort, and it's the love and the joy. And we're all going to go through the mountains, we're going to go through the valleys as well, the good and the bad times, but it's just knowing that love and that peace, and that, I mean, there's times when I see images of like me and Hope together with Jesus, and it's just it's so heartening to know. And I have no doubt where Mike is. He's in heaven, in pass, the way he did, and having visions of that as well of him in heaven is
yeah. Have you, I think I probably know the answer to this just by the way you're answering these questions, have you ever doubted God in all of this? Did you ever want to walk away from it all and say no?
Really strong. Because it's what we cling to, isn't it? And you're right. I mean, when people, they get to a point in their lives where they don't know what else to turn to, and it's easy to turn to the distractions of the world, and sometimes it's when you're in your weakest and your point in your life and your time of just needing to call out to somebody, and that's when people often pray and they call out to God. And it's
and you must come across this perhaps slightly more than other people, just because of the nature of your work. So unbelievably, you work at a hospice, don't you? So were you already doing that before Mike died or became ill? Were you already, so that was something you were already doing? Okay. So to continue to do that after the experience you've had, is that hard, or does that help, or just you kind of compartmentalize it as work?
So I've worked at the hospice now for just over 7 years, and I loved it when I started it because it's just an amazing place. To be honest, I didn't understand a hospice really. I literally thought it was just end of life care for people, and I had a little bit of a fear going in there for my interview. I didn't know what to expect. And I went in the building and I was like, this is nothing like what I expected. It's so warm, it's so bright, it's so welcoming. And what I say to people is, this is kind of almost like a talk I give at work, but it is clinical in a way. You have to have that clinical side of things, but it's completely different to the hospital. And the hospital was so grateful for the hospice, because if we didn't have the hospice, we are the experts in that type of care for people, and it just alleviates a lot of the pressure. I mean, at the moment we're helping the hospital because like helping them with beds. Do you know what I mean? In that sort of sense. And just lifting that weight off them in some way we can. So it's when I started working there, I was very, very aware of the amount of support they're able to give to people, and people are desperate for it. And I felt when I was going home from work each day, I was like, I've done something to help people. Little I know that I would be needing that as well personally, and I'm so grateful that we had it, because it would have been, so Mike was cared for in the hospice at the end of his life, and if I hadn't had that, I would have had to look after a 15-month-old child and a very, very ill dying husband at home, and that would have been, or in the hospital. And he wanted to be in there. He knew that he was going to be cared for in an amazing way. So
And so being there now as well with COVID, has that had a massive impact? Does that mean people can't be with their families in the way that they would have been previously?
So visitors, I mean, usually in pre-COVID, people are able to go to the hospice any time of day, and they're able to usually stay with their loved ones, or there's a separate room that they're able to stay in. And because of restrictions, because of just having to be extra careful, we are able to have visitors, but they are just limited, and it's not to the same capacity that we're able to be, but that's just the nature of what things are at the it's just adapting to what we can do, really. So people are still being cared for in the hospice. It's just the care is still there. The amazing care is just there. It's just we just have to be a bit mindful of everything. And everything's different, isn't it, at the moment?
Absolutely, everything in the whole world. Oh, it's really, really lovely to chat to you. I'm really grateful that you've given me some time, and I've heard your story several times, and really mindful that that having lost Mike is something that you live with day to day, but really, really grateful that you've shared your story with us. I know you shared it in our Christmas story, and you talked about hope, which was just amazing. And I'm sure, I haven't asked you, but I'm sure that, you know, if anybody did want to connect with you and talk with you and share some of their story, if it resonates with yours, that you'd be happy to do that.
Definitely. Yeah. Not a problem. No, not a problem.
So yeah, if people are listening today and they would benefit from chatting with Fiona, then do contact us, or contact us as a church as well. We would always be glad to journey with people and to help people wherever we can. But yeah, huge thank you to you. I just love your story and your faith and the inspiration that you are, and really grateful for your time. So thank you, Fiona.
It's okay. No problem.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.